Hello there, my name is Philip, and today I'm going to be showing you how to do some dynamic shading for your cartoon or comic character. This is actually going to be a two-part series, so today I'm just going to be focusing on the body because there's a lot to the head, so make sure you subscribe so that you can see the next week's episode where I'm going to be talking about the head. Okay, so to start off with, I want to give you the basic concept. So I'm going to draw this. As you can see, it's a pebble. Well, it doesn't really look like a pebble at the moment. That's why we've got to put the shading in. So what I'm going to do is imagine that my light source is coming from this way, which means we're going to have a bit of a bright spot here, and over on this side is going to be our shadow. And now we're going to have a little bit of a shadow underneath because the object is obviously causing a shadow. So this is basically what we're looking at. So we've got a light source which causes a shadow. So that's what we're going to be working with. So what I've done here is I've pre-drawn a male and a female body, and what we're going to be doing is having two different light sources. So imagine it's daytime for our gentleman here and the light's coming on him from this direction, whereas our girl here, imagine it's nighttime and she's on the top of a building and a light is shining up on her. So we're going to have two contrasting light sources. Now here's the thing to think of too. When you're drawing, make sure whatever's in your panel, they all are affected by the same light. So if I was to not have my line here and it was all one picture, and we had two different light sources, it'd look a bit weird. Okay, so let's look at our gentleman here. It's a sunny day, there's a lot of light coming from above, so let's draw our dynamic character in shade. So first thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to work out where my light is actually hitting. So the light's coming from above. Now you don't actually have to draw this, I'm just going to draw it in so that you can see what I'm thinking. So there's going to be light sources basically along here. So these are all the spots that are going to be in light. Now I'm not going to need to draw them, and because I know that that's where the light is, like I did with the pebble, I'm going to draw the opposite for the shadow. So there's the shadow on the shoulder. Now this shoulder is a solid object, so it's going to be causing a shadow as well. So it's going to actually come down onto our bicep over here. And then the bicep itself is going to have its own shadow because it's a nice round 3D object. Now this underside here is going to have a bit of a shadow. Now you'll notice I'm leaving little gaps here. That way you can still see the shape of my character by giving it this little halo effect on the edge. And it just makes it look more interesting so you can still see a picture as well, which is important. Got our forearm over here. And this muscle is going to be causing a bit of shadow. And the hand's also going to cause a little bit of shadow. I'll draw that in as well. Now again, this arm here is going to cast shadow onto this arm. So again, I'm going to do the same over here. It's that part of the arm. So you can see that that's causing a shadow. It looks like a 3D object, but also this part here is also causing shadow. Now the body over here, it's going to cast a shadow. So I'm going to put that in. There we go. And now I'm just going to fill in the shadow that the actual form is going to cause by itself, like so. See how it's starting to look a bit more majestic and powerful, like it has actual shape to it. Okay, so now I'm going to work on the chest. So this part under here is mostly going to be in shadow, whereas this part's in bright light. So we're going to make sure we put that in. Now the chest, the pecs themselves are going to cause shadow because they are also a solid object. Now the arm over here is also going to cause some shadow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in this space here, making sure that I keep that little slither of light so you can still see the definition between the bicep and the actual chest itself. So now he's looking pretty lean and pretty muscly. Okay, so now the arms themselves, they're actually going to cause a fair bit of shadow. So I'm going to completely fill this area in underneath. Okay, so now the abs themselves, they're not going to be seeing a lot of light. So I'm going to be able to have quite dark spots for them. Then under here is going to be a bit of shadow, so I'm just going to put in a little bit of definition underneath. Now this whole area here is going to be in a bit of shadow. There's still some light coming from between the legs, so I'm going to leave a little bit of a halo at the groin there. And there's a muscle just over here, so I'm going to just add a little bit of shape to that. So imagine the light's hitting it there, so it's causing shadow over here. And now the legs, like I said, we're going to have lots of light in these sections here, which means that the bulk of the muscles are going to cause some shadowing over on this side. So you just think where the muscle is, where the light is hitting it, and how the shadow is being cast. Now over here we've got a lot of light coming from between the legs, so the light shining down. So I'm going to just fill in so you can see where the muscles are. Now of course we've got also our neck, so I've got to fill in the neck, so there's going to be quite a bit of shadowing in this clavicle part and a bit down here. Same on this side, because this section here is quite hollow, and the head itself is going to cast some shadow onto the neck. So there's some basic daytime shading for your comic character. Okay, so now let's work on our female body. Now remember I said that she's going to be on a tall building, it's going to be more nighttime, and there's a light shining up. A lot more shadow in this one. Let's have a go. Now I'm just going to show you again where the lighting would be. So these spots mostly over here are going to be in light. Now you don't have to draw these, just doing it to show you. So that's where most of the light's going to be. So there's significantly a lot more shadow on this character. So let's start having a go at that. Okay, so I'll start off with the leg. So we're going to have mostly shadow on her leg. Like that. Same on this side. Mostly shadow. And a bit of shadowing here because it's curling underneath. Okay, so the abs this time are going to be the opposite to what I did there. So imagine I'm going to have a bit of a highlight there, and most of the ab is actually going to be dark because it's mostly in shadow. Now this part is going to be quite hidden. A bit of shadow just underneath to highlight. Arm is a bit more forward. There we go. Okay, so we've got a bit of light here, which means most of this here will be in shadow. Same as over here. So that's that up. Now the top of the forearm over here. Even the hand itself will mostly be in shadow. Casting a bit of shadow over here. So pretty much most of that bicep will be in shadow. This part of the shoulder here will be in quite a bit of light. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a bit of shadow around the top side, like so. Now the chest, the arms are actually casting a bit of shadow, so I'm going to put that in first. And because the breasts are curved, this part will actually curve in to cast the shadow inside. Okay, so the light source is mostly going to be hitting this part, so I'm going to curve around a bit of shadow. See how now it looks like the light's actually shining from underneath? We're going to have a bit of shadow up the top here. This part will definitely be in shadow, and a little bit more which I'm going to connect to that part there. But this part of the clavicle is actually going to be quite well seen. So at the top here, I'm actually going to shade that area. Again, this part will be in shadow because it's quite dark, because it's sort of gaping in, so you've got to make sure that it looks like it's going in rather than sticking up. Whereas the clavicle bone is sticking up, which will be there. Okay, so the neck, we're going to have a little bit of the head reflecting a bit of shadow, but it's mostly going to be quite visible. So they're the two extremes that you're probably going to look at when you're shadowing. Now, as you can see from between the two of them, they're quite different. This guy here's got a lot more white parts on him, whereas our girl over here has a lot more dark parts. So that's what you need to bear in mind when you're drawing your character. Where is the light source and how much light there actually is? Now what I've done here is I've actually cut it out a bin, and instead of using black for my shading, I've actually used just a darker flesh tone, but you'll notice still that there's a lot more shadow on our female here, whereas our guy here has a lot more light. Now what I've also done, because it's color this time, I've actually added a lighter tone to where the light would be really strong, so you can actually see like it's a very light skin tone to accentuate that it's a 3D effect. Whereas over here on our girl, I don't need too much. I've got a little bit underneath and around this side, but because the light is not as strong as it is in the daytime, I'm not having as much of it. Okay, so that's how you shade the body. Now what you want to do now is make sure you subscribe so that you can see the next episode where I talk about how to shade the head, because there's a lot more into it and there's a lot more interesting things you can do with head. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Now the first part of shading is you need to have the correct body to shade, have the anatomy right. So what I've done here is I've got my how to draw arms and how to draw legs videos for you to have a go at, so you can draw your own arms and legs and then start shading from what you've learned in this episode.